We're live. We're here. Who even knows when we go live? But now we are live. And I'm Jared Yates Sexton. I'm here with Danielle Moody. Welcome to the check-in, where a couple of friends check in on their lunch break and talk about what it feels like to live under growing fascism. Danielle, I said to you before we even started, I am so glad to be sitting in my regular space and not a car outside of Dick's Sporting Goods, and being able to do this and being able and by the way, I am very, very grateful for this community of people who are tuning in and talking
Yeah,
about themselves and doing the hard work. My friend Danielle, how are you?
I am good. I have to tell you that I was so grateful last week. I'm glad that you're back in your space. I'm glad you're back in your home, but I was so grateful that you were like, yeah, all right, I'll find a Wi-Fi connection and pull over, cuz I don't know if I could have gone through the week without us having the ability to check in. Like, it genuinely, I know other people, who are watching, they say how helpful it is. They feel like it's therapy without the therapist. Like, they feel, seen and heard, but like, it's how I feel being able to be in conversation with you. So it's just like, I was very grateful that we were able to squeeze in time on the road while you were on the road. But I was just saying to you before, you know, it's really interesting because I feel like, and I was talking to my therapist about this last week, and the holding of polarities, and me saying that, it's like this weird guilt that kind of creeps in when you're asked how you're doing, and you're doing well. And you're doing well at a time where you're holding how you're doing well with the fact that everything around you is actually crumbling. And it's a weird, space. It's a weird polarity to hold, to understand, to try and make sense of. But when you asked me, how are you? And I'm like, I'm really good. And it's just like, oh, well, why are you, what's going on? It's like, I've spent an enormous amount of time this summer with my family. And, normally, because I live fairly close. I live like an hour and a half away from my family, away from my childhood town. When I moved back to New York, specifically from DC, in order to be closer to my family. And so I've been back in New York now 7, 8 years, I think. So it's great, but I often can go still a couple of months and not see them. But over this past summer, I've been seeing them like every other weekend. And I realized that for me to be around my grounding force, family, to be in, a place of ease for my nervous system, like, it does wonders to help me be able, when I come back home, to be able to be clear-eyed, be grounded. So, you know, it's it's good for me to notice when things are headed in the wrong direction, but it's also really good to understand when things are headed in the right direction. What's the driving force for that? And then how can I continue that, continue with consistency around what is good?
Man, what you just brought up, I think, and I'm not saying this facetiously, it's the meaning of life. It truly is. Like, if somebody were to what is the meaning of life? It's to find the things that sustain you and replenish you and inspire you and give you love and hope and direction and meaning. I mean, really, that's what it is. And it's an odd thing because I feel that way too. Being able to spend time with people that I love and doing the work that I want to do, all of those kinds of things, like even in the midst of absolute chaos. I mean, it's the elixir, right?
Yeah.
It's the thing that makes it okay because, just to sort of parallel it, because what you're talking about is what I've been trying to do and trying to find. And of course, we are all messy and we're all trying to learn and recover and live in a situation that we don't want to live in, and
Yeah.
live in a world that isn't fair or kind or human. And I'm just thinking about sort of what's happening outside of that, because I was trying to do that as well, right? And I certainly had moments of it, and real incredible moments of it that are now going to sustain me and keep me replenished and hopeful. Like, what's happening on the other side of that? Like,
Hmm.
not only do we still have the brutality of this administration and this fascistic world that is taking shape, but we also have so much deviancy and abuse and disgusting stuff. Like literally to keep track of what's going on in our politics right now, you have to absorb some of the most
I know.
wretched, disturbing things. And we're in the middle right now of this weird inflection point with everything, where you have a dictatorial president who has consolidated so much power. And presently, there is a gathering controversy around him that involves some of the most despicable crimes that a human being could ever commit. And for anybody who has ever been around an abusive, they are never more dangerous than when their abuses are being exposed.
Yep.
And when all of a sudden they start feeling a lack of control. I was talking about this on the Muckrake podcast that came out yesterday. Nick, my co-host, he was like, this whole Obama thing with them talking about arresting Obama and these other people, do you think it's possible? Yeah, I do. Because this is what happens when an abuser gets exposed, and particularly a dictatorial abuser. They will use their powers to do
Yeah.
that. And so, what is on the other side of trying to center yourself and grow yourself and replenish yourself to survive the maelstrom? Over here is the most toxic, disgusting, destabilizing, traumatizing shit that you will ever imagine. And that is not a way to live. Like most of us would just say, no, I don't want anything to do with this. This is repulsive and I will move away from it so I don't have to be a part of it. But that is the reality of our lives. And we can't just ignore it or else it's going to get worse. So we have to figure out how to have these pockets of joy and stabilization and healthiness. And what you just brought up, it's the secret. It's the entire reason that we exist, and it's the entire way that we are going to survive this thing is to hold both of those things while also creating these places where we can be safe and nourished and healthy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was thinking about, and we talked about it last week, and I said last week that we need to that the goal is to get to a place where we can observe and not absorb, right? Where we can observe what is happening and not absorb like all the toxicity that it takes. You know those people who are tasked and they're in India and they're like tasked with watching some of the most violent and disturbing and disgusting things on the internet to flag them, but that job is such a short tenured job because of the trauma that it inflicts on people to have to ingest that kind of toxicity. We have to understand that that's to a certain extent we are being exposed to on a regular basis the most heinous and the most depraved parts of our society that are now a place that we call home. It was one thing when you used to watch it and you used to say, well, thank God I'm not there, or thank God I don't live here. It's outside of your front door. I mean, I just watched a video of a young black man and the cops break into his window with the back of a gun and then punch him in the face, and he recorded the entire thing. And then we're being told that, oh, well, you don't know what happened beforehand. I actually don't give a fuck
I
what
don't even
happened
give
beforehand.
beginnings of a
I
fuck.
don't give a fuck what happened beforehand. And the idea that you would try and make us think that anything that happened beforehand could warrant that type of abuse by law enforcement is the problem. And I think that, again, over the last 10 years of living under Trumpism, the idea that we have become so numb to the depravity that Donald Trump is sitting in the Oval Office and saying, he just said, Jared, not like a few hours ago, oh, they don't have any evidence. He said that we don't have any evidence about Barack Obama. He's like, but I have some feelings. Like he literally said that. And he goes, because he said that when you mention Obama, right? He goes, the cameras go this way. He literally said it in the
Yeah.
Oval Office that what I'm doing right now is playing a game with the red bouncing ball. And I'm throwing all of them out like we're at the circus. And you got to follow all of them so that you don't know and you're not hip to the ways in which I'm trying to bury, right, these Epstein files that I was the one that brought up. And so I just think that it's really important for us to create our boundaries, our like psychic and spiritual and physical boundaries that allow us to be able to navigate what we're taking in and not take it on like a ship taking on water that is sinking. Because when you feel like you're in that place, like you got to figure out a really fast pivot before you sink. And that's their strategy. And so the more that we understand like the strategy of distraction, of hopelessness, of anger, of fear and ratcheting it up, it's like, so then how I spend my time also becomes a political act and an act of resistance.
Exactly right. And the wildest thing about it is to go ahead, and I wouldn't be me if I didn't say this. Like, this has been what it has been for forever. This is what we have lived in. It's just a more concentrated, unhidden version of it. I've said in the past, when it comes to disappearing immigrants and putting them in concentration camps, that doesn't happen without the war on terror. It doesn't happen without the carceral state that has taken advantage of black and brown people and poor people, in all this time. You actually don't get to something like this Epstein problem if you didn't have the sexualization of young girls, the exploitation of women, and an ever present patriarchy that runs on these things. Like, it didn't just pop up and create it, right? It's the same thing as Trump. He is a symptom of a larger disease. And the problem is that we have had to live in that environment our entire lives. We've had to see it, feel it within ourselves that it's wrong, and still go about our days and our lives, right? And pretend like
Yeah.
it's at our door and in our lives and affecting the people that we love and that we are close to. Then you have the added component of, again, you have an abuser here who is trying to save himself, which is the entirety of Donald Trump's life. It's reaction constantly. That's who he is. And it's trying to control and abuse people in order to protect himself. And he's surrounded by a bunch of people who do that. In that environment, Danielle, if you stay around it too long, it makes you crazy.
Yep.
It makes you crazy because you're literally trying to negotiate with somebody who's trying to control reality in order to save themselves. And there's no negotiating with it. There's no, okay, hey, please stop doing this and we'll do this. No, because that is the nature of who they are. And that is the entirety of their lives. It's like, it's seriously, it's like the old idea of looking at a great white shark and being like, stop eating things. Stop
Yep.
attacking things. It's
Yep.
who you are, it's how this thing works. He's beyond redemption. And for us to continually engage in that and to not have a truth within ourselves or have a grounding reality that we're living in where we know what is true, what is real, what is good, what is nourishing, what is healthy, if you don't know that, it
Yep.
will drive you fucking insane. And that is the environment that those abusers, that's the only environment that they thrive in. It's either complicity and fealty, in which you say, whatever you say, boss, whatever
Yep.
you say, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. We'll do that. That's fine. Please don't hurt me. You either do that, or eventually over time, you get ground down by it. And for anyone, again, who has been in an abusive situation, the only way to get out of it is to find a center of truth and gravity that is outside of it. That's the only thing that you can do. And so you both, it's a type of balancing act, again, that we weren't taught to do, that our society does not prioritize and or even communicate. There's a reason why none of us have a background in public education or an experience that tells us how to fight fascism or how to organize or, quite frankly, how to be healthy. That's
Yeah.
specialized knowledge. You have to go pay a therapist. You have to go pay a
Yep.
program. You have to do this or do that. That's the premium package, right? And you're
Mm.
supposed to go to therapy and feel better about your job and feel better about that, but not talk about who you are and not talk about how you feel and how you're organizing your life. What we're talking about now is literally revolutionary. And and it's revolutionary not because it's so far outside of like who we are. It's because we live in an artificial, exploitative, abusive society that doesn't want us figuring out who we are and how to be happy and how to be safe. And so now that act of resistance, that anti-fascism, that revolutionary behavior is actually about figuring out what it means to be a living, breathing, happy human being. Period.
I think, God, you hit so many good points, particularly around public education and the things that are kept from us, and the things that if you are wealthy enough and you are educated enough, then you have access to, but you're building your own bridges. I think, for instance, I remember when I first started working on Capitol Hill, and I'm working on the Education and Labor Committee. That was what it was called at the time, in the House. And I'm saying to the member that I was working for, why don't we have nationwide financial literacy
Amen.
that begins in kindergarten and goes through like 12th grade, where you're not only learning how to run a household, you're learning how to invest, you're learning like money, like how to have a healthy relationship with money. And we tried to like work on, using New York City as a microcosm, which they did. Mayor Bloomberg at the time had created like a financial literacy program that was working in New York City. But it was like there was pushback to it. And why was there pushback to it? Because they need you broke.
They need
The
growth.
banks need you broke, and they need you in debt. The credit card companies need you broke, and they need you in debt. Because if everyone actually understood and developed healthy relationship to money, to debt, right, to taking care of themselves, to investment, then those companies wouldn't be able to prey on you,
Yep.
right? They wouldn't be able to. So remember, during the Obama years, they passed legislation to get rid of the fine print, to get rid of the abuses of these credit card companies and these banks and what have you, because on all of this language was to hook you in, right? Paying only interest and never actually getting to the principal amount, right? And you're just continuing to live your life on credit because they're also feeding you, the highlights of capitalism. And shouldn't you want wealth? And shouldn't you want this? And equating your value to that.
Right.
So now, if I'm going to have value, right, I need to put that on credit as a human being. And so we think about like when you start to really, you open one door and then another one opens and then another one opens, you start to ask these questions about, we would be a better society, a healthier society if, instead of kids being thrown into detention or suspended from school, that they learned like meditation, that they learned like, peer education, that they learned coping mechanisms. But then, Jared, we would be breaking the school to prison pipeline, which is a fucking moneymaker. So you look at all the ways that our public education is thwarted. And not only is it thwarted, you're fed a whole bunch of other information and things that get you roped in to living your worst life. So it is revolutionary to pause and say, why do I like these things? Why do I want these things? Is it actually nourishing for me? Is it actually creating a wholer, right? A more holistic version of me? Or do I continue to fall for the crumbs that they are leaving out, right? That lead me to addiction, that lead me into debt, that lead me into gambling, all aspects of my life away. And you realize that society is part of that larger structure because where there is money to be made at your expense, they will double down.
That's exactly right. And I want to say a couple of things. I mean, you just nailed so much of it dead to rights about what the problem is in this society. This isn't about smoke-filled rooms where people sit down with a ledger and they're like, we're going to do this and it's going to lead to this. We're going to do this and it's going to lead to this. This is the nature of capitalism. It's capitalistic incentives, which is always, because it's about perpetual growth and intentional scarcity and precarity, it's always leading in that direction because it's always about the pursuit of endless profit. That's it.
Yes.
And if you go, you think about something like what you just said, which is think about how much of a difference there would be made if people were, instead of just being like put on a pipeline that's about get through school as quickly as possible and then get a career and don't think about it. It's all increased quicker and quicker to the point where I saw not too long ago, I was doing some research for a project I'm doing. They were asking 5-year-olds to go ahead and say what career they wanted and then changing the entire curriculum around their elementary education, junior high, high school, and then college direction. Do you know what you're not giving people a chance for? You're not giving people a chance to figure out who they are. You're not giving them a chance to learn the skills that they need for a well rounded life. You're seeing them as a cog in a larger machine. That's it. It drains the humanity out of it. And because of the financial incentives, it fucks everything up every
Yep.
time. And you look at something like the 2008 market crash. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because we live in a society of booms and bust. And it's the period of time in which the wealthy and the powerful, they do these giant smash and grabs. They just go out and they get everything that they want. They don't think about the future. They don't actually have a future plan. They'll put down like a 5-year plan or 10-year plan, but you know what's on the 5-year and 10-year plans, Danielle? It's more profit,
More.
it's more market share, and it's more access to resources. There's no thought about sustainability or what is good for the people underneath the profit seekers. So as a result, there's no room for humanity. There's no room for something that will actually work. It's a bunch of predators who are doing things in the moment without thinking about their consequences and long term sustainability, which, to go ahead and bring this around what we've been talking about, that's what these predators are doing.
Hmm.
That's the people who exploit other people. They're not thinking about how it's going to affect another person. They're not thinking about the humanity on the other side of the table or what's happening when they interact with someone like a Jeffrey Epstein. They are living in a perpetual present. That's it. They're not thinking about what kind of consequences these things are going to have. And the thing is, Danielle, it's not just Trump, it's not just Musk, it's not just
Yep.
oligarchs or the dictators or authoritarians. That type of cultural rot, it's from the top down.
Yep.
It's all of us. We're not supposed to think about debt. We're not supposed to think about precarity. We're supposed to live every day as if there is no tomorrow. Because the only thing that keeps an economy of perpetual quote unquote growth going is
Constant consumption.
it's constant consumption. And we're not supposed to think about, can I afford this? Is this good for me? Do I actually need this? And eventually, over time, when profit seeking means that we're not going to get paid what we need to get paid, we're not going to be able to get healthcare or education, all of these things get worse. What's left? Debt. And no one thinks about the fact that eventually debt's going to lead to collapse. That's why it's a cycle of booms and busts, and they work the exact same way. We're supposed to be sleepwalking. That's it. It's funny. I was playing, while I was traveling, I found this Pac-Man game and I was playing Pac-Man. And Pac-Man just goes across the screen
Yeah.
eating pellets. He's trying to avoid things as he's doing it. Pac-Man's not thinking about himself. He's eating the pellets. He is a perpetual eating machine that's just going around. That's how we're supposed to function in this society.
Yep.
We're not supposed to find the things that matter because the things that matter keep us from consumption. They make us happy. They make us feel fulfilled. They give us a sense of meaning that can't be commodified. It's not about like going out with, someone somewhere and doing something. It's about being with someone. It's about feeling, like intimacy and humanity and love. That can't be priced. That
No.
can't be commodified. We're supposed to be living moment to moment, and the antidote to it is presentness and awareness and actually valuing the things that you should value as opposed to acting like these predators who are never thinking about the consequences and they're never thinking about actual worth or
And
themselves.
I mean, this is why for the last 10 years, there has been a war on woke.
Exactly.
This is why for 10 years, they have equated being woke, right,
Yep.
with being, radicalized and a liberal and this, that, and the other thing. And just drill it down to its core. Folks, they don't want you to think.
No.
They don't want you to have time to pause. Capitalism is about grinding you like a cog in a machine until you're no longer functioning. And then maybe if you have the ability to retire, what do we learn about retirement? That
You
by the
talk.
time that you get there, right, you die a couple of years later.
Yep.
because everything in your life has been about grinding and producing. And then when you stop the grind and the production, and now you're lost because you don't know what your value as a human being is,
Exactly.
sickness comes in, depression comes in, death comes. And so to me, when people say, oh, rest is an act of resistance, which Trisha Hersey wrote a book on it, Rest as Resistance, it is truly, when you think about if everything right now feels like it's speeding up, then your response to that is to slow the fuck down. It is not to try and keep pace, right, with the dizziness that this administration is putting out for the rest of us. Your response then is to slow down. If you feel like there is too much that is going on, oh my God, I can't follow every headline, then you pick one. Because the goal, like I said, is to throw out all of the red bouncing balls and keep everybody distracted and keep your head on a swivel. So if everything is about speeding up, if everything is about grinding, if everything is about distraction, then your response to that, your acts of resistance are the opposite. And when people say, Danielle, I don't know what it is that I should do, slow down.
You'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out. When you allow for some quiet, you allow for some space, where your reaction, your response is not to pick up the device and hold it up to your face or put in earbuds or go on a binge of television or food or liquor or whatever. If you just give yourself some space and some silence, all of the things that they don't want you to have, you'll figure it out.
And on that note, for people who don't know it, this is one of the things that I've been working on, like out in my organizing sort of work out in the world. What you just described is the difference between a activated state and at rest. And we are kept in an activated state constantly. And for people who don't know that, what this is, it's evolutionary because we are animals and we have an evolutionary memory and we have all of these sort of like learned mechanisms: fight, flight, fawning, freeze, all of these things, right? And it's the idea like you are literally living in a society that is completely programmed to make you feel at all moments as if you are in danger. And I don't mean, a lion's going to attack you and take you, but your body thinks that's what's going on. Your mind thinks that's what's going on because it's been programmed in. It's quiet. You might lose your job. You might fall behind. You might not be able to pay for things. If you lose your job, you might not have health care and you'll lose everything. Oh, on top of that, if like you lose everything, you might lose everything and you might be alone and vulnerable. And there's a difference. Social media is meant to make you feel activated so that you're scrolling and constantly looking for the
Yeah.
next threat. It's programmed for that. The people who do it, they know it. That shit is completely intentional. Everything about it is created to make you feel constantly activated. If
Yep.
you don't look away, the next threat is right over there and you are going to be dead. And there's a reason why we feel so exhausted. There's a reason why we're not able to figure out what we're supposed to do. We are kept constantly in an activated state where logic doesn't come in, self doesn't come in. You're not making choices, you're reacting. You're sur-
Yes.
and when you are reacting and surviving, there's no room for self. There's no room for you to know what you need to do, or more importantly, what do you want to do?
Hmm.
How should you live? How is it that nourishes you? Everyone is living in an evolutionary state in which they are primed at any moment for disaster or collapse or attacks. And that doesn't mean that you're not living in a dangerous time, because you are. But if you think about the idea evolutionary wise of, oh my God, and by the way, humans, we had to go into caves. The reason why we need connection is because we had to band together against threats to us. You have to figure out the moments where you are under attack and the moments where you aren't, so you can rest.
Yeah.
You can replenish yourself and make a plan. And we're kept from that because that's how this society is programmed.
Yeah. I think that when you start to pull back, and somebody had put it in the chat and they said, for them, that's what COVID was, right? COVID. the great slowdown, COVID, the thing that we refuse to talk about, that we all collectively have decided as 330 million plus Americans didn't actually happen, that a million of us didn't actually perish because of the man that is currently back in the White House. That like that this understanding of the pressure cooker in our society, the caste systems that are ever present here, that we all just pretend that it didn't happen and go on. And that is so quintessentially American, Jared, in that numbing, in that forgetting, right? And for me, it's like, no, don't forget about that time, because you know what we learned? We learned deeply about ourselves, our loneliness, our lack of community. We learned deeply about the need for connection. We learned also about the fact that many people, millions and millions of people, go into an office every day, commuting for 2 to 3 hours a day to sit dead in a place for 8 to 9, 10 hours, right? Have no work life balance. And guess what? We're able to do that same job at home without interruption and without interrupting their company or their firm's bottom line. But they wanted to push you back into work. Why? Not because you weren't as productive at home, but because of the real estate commercial market.
Exactly.
So when we think about these things, it's like they keep you so busy and so inundated so that you don't think. Because when we were home and we were saying to ourselves, wait a minute, why am I living like this? Why am I living on this hamster wheel? Why am I working to pay for childcare that barely covers childcare so that I can continue giving everything that I have to this company and not my family? Like, why am I negotiating parts of my soul? And that's what capitalism forces you to do. And then they tell you, and because it's so painful, the negotiating of pieces of your soul, you turn to other things that fill the hole that is being created by you giving up pieces of yourself.
100%. And I think about, I was I was a professor for 17 years. And I think back on it
Mm.
now that I'm not there. I think about like how I thought about it, because I didn't think about it. I rationalized it, right? Which is you have 2 semesters, and then you have a summer that's like 3 months in between, right? And you get into that rat race where in the middle of one semester you're like, I just need to make it to December.
Mhm.
I just need to make it to May or June, right? And then in the summer, I'll have some time, I'll have some space, right? And then you get to it and like you don't know what to do with it. You have a bunch of work that you need to do there. And all of a sudden, you find out what you're doing is you're surviving all of it. And
Yep.
what are you doing? You are ransoming away your life. You're like, oh God, it's Monday. I have to get through Monday and I have to get to Tuesday. Oh my God, it's Tuesday. I got to get to Wednesday. I just have to get to Friday. And you know what you do on Friday when you're done because you're exhausted and you're sad and you're lonely? Maybe you go out and you drink too much in order to numb it down. And
Yep.
then sudden, you have a weekend that's lonely. You drink to numb it down. You consume, you do whatever project you need to do around. Meanwhile, what are you doing, Danielle? You are disassociating through life. You're not actually living, you're just surviving from moment to moment. And I know that that is a sad thing to think about. I have so much grief about it. That's something that I as you're coming into like a more aware moment, whether you want to call it woke or recovery or whatever it is, you're going to have to process that grief. And you're going to have to forgive yourself for letting yourself live that way.
Yep.
Right? It wasn't because you didn't love yourself, it's because you didn't know. You didn't have an understanding of it. Maybe it didn't start in childhood. Maybe you got in one system after another that exploited you and kept you moving almost like with a cattle prod, right? Move, move, consume, consume. And you have to grieve that. And then you have to say, oh my God, I'm out of this cage. I'm no longer living from moment to moment and reacting. I'm now becoming a person. You have to learn who you are. You have to learn what it is that replenishes you, what brings you joy, what actually makes your life worth living. And what we're talking about is it's hard.
Yep.
It's really, really hard work. It's a lot easier to get lost in these fantasies and let someone else think for you and let a society tell you what to do, and then we have entire algorithms that are based on
Yep.
that are like, and that's one of the reasons this feels the way it does. We feel like we're being controlled because
Because
we're
we are.
told, and that feels bad. And it also feels bad to go into recovery and learn who you are, but here's the best news about it. The joy on the other side of that recovery is so immense and beautiful. Like, it makes me want to cry talking about it. And that is where we have to go.
Yes.
That's what's in front of us right now. It's not just winning elections, it's not just opposing fascism. It's doing those things while also becoming our true selves. And that is not an easy thing, but it is so worth it.
It's so worth it, but it's so necessary.
Yes.
Because when you start to realize who is pulling the strings, what is pulling the strings, and that you're actually not in control of your own life, then guess what? You have the opportunity to change. Like, that's the thing, is that I want folks to realize, like, there is always the opportunity to change, to shift, to become more awakened in how you are navigating through your life. I will tell you that at the beginning of COVID, Jared, beginning of COVID, when we thought it was going to be like a couple of weeks, and then it was like, oh, it'll just be a couple of months. The first 2 months, I was drinking like a bottle of wine a night, like a bottle of wine a night, and not even realizing it. I'm just like, what? I'm just sitting in front of the tea, just like one glass after the other. And then I'm waking up in the mornings, like, just feeling like shit, right? On top of emotionally feeling like shit. Now I physically feel like shit. And like the cycle would continue until one day I was like, so A, it doesn't seem like we're getting out of this anytime soon. And B, I don't want to fucking live like this. Right? Like, and so, okay, we're going to put that down. We're going to start to exercise. We're going to get outside. We're going to do the things that we can that are nourishing and that are not taking, right? That are not subtracting from our lives. And I think that it's not to say, and I say this all the time, it's not to say that when you like being awakened, being woke, it is a constant practice. It is a constant practice because there are so many forces at play that are pulling at our attention, that are pulling at like our production, that are pulling at us. And so it's a constant practice so that there will be times when you slip back into old ways and slip back into old patterns, but you're more conscious of what you're doing, that you're not doing it through a sleepwalking lens. You're like, oh, I see what I just did there. Okay, got it. I'm going to hold this. I'm not going to beat myself up. But tomorrow, I got to transition. I got to do something that is different. Right. And I feel it's how I talk to myself on a regular basis because with the phone, with social media, which we need for work as content creators, I try and be really conscious of like just the mindless picking up the phone, swiping, picking up the phone, swiping, right? I try and be really conscious of the things that we're doing because everything around us is tooled to make us unconscious and actually to reward it, right? To reward it, right? The numbingness, like, oh, here's another show to binge. Here's another, like, money off of like how much you want to drink. And, here's all the junk food. Everything is so cheap, right? As everything around us gets more expensive. So maybe I will just have the stuff that makes me feel good in the moment because I feel like such shit. Everything is about that addicted. Right? Addicting us to what makes us feel good for like a moment. And the work of life is like what makes us feel good and nourished and healthy for the long haul. And it doesn't mean that bad things don't happen. It doesn't mean that you're not still navigating through obstacles and struggle isn't present. Like, we're not talking about a fantasy, but we're talking about the ability to live consciously and then react in ways that are serving our best selves and not the system.
I think a lot. And to give an example of exactly what we're talking about, back in like when I used to be only a creative writer, writing fiction and stuff, one of the most important figures for me was a guy named Raymond Carver, who's considered like one of the greatest short story writers of all time, who eventually gave up drinking. But when he would talk about his drinking, he talked about how it began by drinking too much. And then all of a sudden, like you're drinking before 5 p.m. And then all of a sudden, you're living a life in which you're outside the liquor store waiting on it to open so that you can function through your day because you need to numb it. You don't want to think about the pain. You also don't want to think about the people that you're hurting, the people who love you and depend upon you. And by the way, that deep, deep pain that all of this is covering it up, the
Yeah.
things you haven't processed and dealt with. And you know what I think about, Danielle? One, why did MAGA and the right wing world and lots of Americans, why did they come to deny that COVID existed? And why did they call for everything to get reopened? Because it's the liquor store closed down. They couldn't go out into the world and do all of their distractions. They
That's
couldn't live
it.
their life going from one moment to another, consuming to make themselves feel good. They didn't do this consciously. They did it because of an addiction that they weren't able to sit with. The denial of COVID and all of this other stuff, including anti vaccination shit, all of it was about they weren't allowed to get to their drug. And,
Damn.
and some people think about this and they think about addicts and they think about them being morally awful. Good people all the time do things that aren't healthy for them and aren't healthy for others. They do it because they've learned it. They've done it because it has sustained them. They've done it because they have a deep wound that they haven't been able to fix. And what you just brought up about that time period, several people, and several millions of people, spent that time of trauma being like, I need my drugs. And I don't mean drugs, in some cases, actual
Yep.
drugs. I need to watch things. I need to drink things. I need to consume things. I need to go places. I can't deal with this. I have to keep going. For some of us, it was about, oh my God, I have deep wounds that have made me unhappy. And now I have the ability to look at those wounds and start to heal them. And instead of going out and getting those drugs and those distractions, and instead of relying on these old coping mechanisms that have hurt us and hurt the people that we loved, like, and by the way, going back to that shame and grief, Danielle, I'm sure you and I and everybody watching this and listening to it, we've hurt people.
Yeah.
We have. And like, it makes me sad to say that. And we can't live in a moral society where we say, oh my God, like only people who are pure are good. We've all done things that aren't good. We've all done things that have hurt people. It's the decision of whether or not we don't do it anymore,
Right.
whether or not we now make decisions to not do those things. And what's happening politically and culturally right now in the United States of America is you have people that say those people who are telling you that are fucking bad, and they're trying to make you feel bad, and they're trying to get one over on you. Don't listen to them. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. In fact, do more. Increase
Mm.
it. More and more. Take more drugs. Take more of those drugs that are going to
Because
numb.
it's your right. It's your right to do so.
It's your, and not just your right. That is what America actually is. Is
Mm.
it's a nation where inherently it's not about freedom of speech or any of these things. It's about the freedom to not think, to not reconsider, to not think about hurting other people. It is the right to keep doing it and increase it and get worse.
Mm. Somebody just put in, they said, a sociopathic society. Yes.
It,
Like that. I mean, that behavior. My God, yes, because I feel like we have had different discussions about their idea of patriotism, their idea of liberty, their idea of freedom. And now you've couched it in like addiction and being able to numb and consume and just like, and to not think. And that is their version of like this perverse idea of patriotism, of what it means to be an American, is like the worst version of
yep,
America.
yep.
And that is so terrifying because I think now about when you were on the road last week and you said there are Trump stores. There is like this capitalist cult of personality that isn't just about the politics. It's about having a piece of this man, this movement, this moment. And I think that it's also like having that stuff is like walking around with a flag raised that says I can do whatever the fuck I want when I want. That in their mind is what it means to be an American. And that is so grotesque. It is so grotesque and so immature, right? It is an underdeveloped way to actually like see the world and see yourself in the world. It's as if like if we were all just to have remained toddlers when you're learning about the sense of I, right? Like, and then everything becomes about the I because you're in this beginning stage. But the fact that they want to remain there or regress there and see that as a point of celebration, that's a wild place to be.
And you again nailed it. And I want to say something, and I'm so glad that we've got on this topic. I'm going to say something that's disturbing, but it's true, which is the problems that we're having right now and the threats that we're facing. It isn't because we have a bunch of adults who are acting as abusive adults. They're children. They are grown ass adults with the mentality and emotional and intellectual capacity of children. They have stunted growth and stunted development. And yeah, listen, I love children, but that's before their prefrontal cortex develop. They can be sociopaths. They want what they want and they don't always think about what they're doing. That has to come through like being raised in a healthy environment and being taught things and learning lessons. The people that we're dealing with right now, they didn't get that. They didn't have that. They have had arrested development to the point, and there's a reason, and not to get off on a rant here, there's a reason that as this thing got worse, we saw more childish things become popular and influential. You can't
Mm.
look at what the rise of fascism and not look at the rise of comic book culture, fandom culture, all of these infantile things. I'm not saying that people can't watch cartoons or enjoy comic book movies, but what has actually happened is that capitalism shifted and it's like, oh, people want to be kids. People just want people want people to make decisions for them. They want the comforting things. And eventually what happens when you get in these addictions and these unhealthy cycles, you're a child. You're literally acting and moving through the world as a child in an adult's body. And so what we've actually had is not just because of culture, but it's because of capitalism. Capitalism doesn't want us to be adults. They want us to work as adults, but they want us to act as children. We're not supposed to think about the people we hurt. We're not supposed to think about the people around the world that we exploit. We're not supposed to think about the consequences of our actions or think logically about averting disasters like climate change or treating other human beings like they're real. We're supposed to think from a childlike perspective with childlike solutions while the adults in the room absolutely take everything from us. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And I know that that's disturbing, but that's sociopathic society. And that's exactly what it is. It's sociopathy. It is taking advantage of the arrested development of millions upon millions of people because none of this, like we look at Trump, we look at MAGA, we know it's bullshit. We
Yep.
look at all the contradictions, we look at all of the absurdities. It's not supposed to make sense. It's actually supposed to make anti sense because it's appealing to a childish version of the world that is about you getting what you want when you want it, and that's it.
I mean, and I just like the more that I listen to you and the more that like I'm like thinking right now, the more I'm like, when people like, then resistance looks like pausing. Resistance looks like thinking. Resistance looks like limiting the numbing things in your life. And those numbing things don't necessarily have to be alcohol or food or, or actual drugs. Think about the things that you do on a regular basis that are mindless. And I'm not saying that we all don't need a break, but think about there's a difference between having a break and numbing, right? And get to the why of that. And it's just like, and the fact is, they don't want us to understand ourselves. They don't want us to relate to ourselves, to each other on a human level. Everything is about dehumanization, is about ramped up production, and is about ramped up fear so that you stay in the state of perpetual, like, distraction and disorientation. And if that is what we are seeing, then it is, what are we doing? It goes back to ground. It goes back to nourishing. It goes back to like figuring out what is soft and what is good in response to what is hard and what is bad. Right. And like it go like, and I say this all the time. If the goal is to burn books, is to erase history, is to end curriculums, then your response to that needs to be to read as much as possible, needs to be to consume as much knowledge as possible, to question as much as possible. Like your active resistance could look like starting a book club and we're finishing 5 books by the end of the year, right? That are, about like the world around us, right? Like that, I want people to understand, like, naming these things are important. The naming that we're doing is important so that you recognize what is happening, because once you recognize what is happening, you have the power to change it. It's like being woken up out of a really deep sleep and you're like, oh, you're disoriented, blah, blah. And then you're like, okay, I'm awake now. Now I can make decisions about how I put my one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, and that's so beautiful. I mean, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, it doesn't mean that while you're asleep that you're not hurting yourself or hurting others. It happens. And then you wake up and you say, "Oh my God, here I am." And like, what is real and what isn't? And somebody in the comments said, like, as a kid, that they were soft and sensitive, and then it was bullied out of them. Same thing happened to me.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about Donald Trump. We're not just talking about MAGA. We're talking about a system of cascading socializations and reinforcements. There's a reason why bullies exist. There's a reason why abuse happens. We all start off as children, and we all start off good because we're good. We are good deep down. It just so happens that it's supposed to grind you down because the people who do that, they're not happy. They're not well. And for someone to be aware and to be soft and loving and thoughtful, here's the thing, Danielle, and I think if there's anything people walk away with this from, the most dangerous thing to a system is for a person to be soft and loving and well. Period. There's a reason why that has to get beaten and scared out of us. Because
Mhm.
the moment that you are soft and aware and loving, you start looking around, you say, this shit doesn't work. This shit doesn't feel good.
Yep.
Something change. You are supposed to shut that down and be afraid to show it. The people we're dealing with, they're afraid. They're very
Very afraid.
afraid. And that awakening that you just brought up, that's what they're afraid of. Because if you allow yourself to come out of your stupor, if you allow yourself to come out of that reactive life that we've been talking about, you have to face what you've done and who you are. And that's so scary for so many people. And the miracle of it is being able to wake up and say, oh my God, I need to deal with this. But more importantly, I need to deal with the future. And that is what they cannot do, period.
They really can't. And, and I will say, somebody just asked for a recommendation for books, and there are so many. And maybe between you and I, we can put together like
I would love that.
some type of list. But I tell folks that right now I'm reading a book that's old, right? I'm reading Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, right? And and it's about the ego and the ego driven society. And once you like detach from your ego, like what you get to the core of yourself, of who you are, without being dictated to from on high or driven by your most like I guess greed, like being driven by greed, being driven by material, being driven by consumption. And I just think that it's this evaluation, particularly in this moment, it is so necessary for our survival. It is so necessary, not just for our survival, but for our long term thriving. to recognize that we have got to cut the strings. We have got to wake up. We've got to consistently like better ourselves, grow ourselves, nurture ourselves, right? Like, I think, the small things that people do, like I don't want to buy produce anymore because now they're putting all of these chemicals on them and I have no idea what I'm getting, right? Like, and they're not even going to put on a label. They don't even want the basic thing. I just heard my mom just said to me the other day, "Oh, Danielle, they've started to now grow meat in labs because there's not enough cattle. But they're not even going to tell us which meat is being grown in a lab and which is going to be like actual animal meat." And she's like, "So it sounds like we're all about to become vegetarians because like, what the fuck?" And I'm saying because and they don't want you to know so that you can't make conscious decisions. So your response is about then, how do I become more conscious? How do I wake myself up out of this stupor that I didn't put myself in, but I was put in? It is the matrix. It is being in those pods, right? And some people are comfortable staying there. You have 77 million people that are very comfortable. They voted for Donald Trump not once but twice. They're very comfortable with staying there. And anyone that seeks to get out of that pod is an affront to their life and how they're living. So it needs to be shut down, needs to be done away with.
Yeah, and that I think is as good of a point as any to end on, because it's funny. Somebody said labeling laws. I think about that all the time. Like, how long did it take for us to find out what was in our food, what the caloric intake was, like how it like ended up affecting us or whatever? They fought against that tooth and nail. And that's not a small thing, but compared to what we're talking about, erasing history, affecting curriculum, they want to create the perfect containment unit for us to not have the information where we can wake up. And I want to say one last thing, and I think it's important in this. Danielle, you and I are having this conversation. I think it's important for us to say we can talk about these things. We're not perfect. We fuck up all the time. I fucked up so much in the past couple of weeks. It's incredible. And I want to say for people, and like we're able to talk about it, like display this, whatever, because, we have this thing. Like, progress is not a straight line.
No.
You can backtrack. If you're trying to give up a substance, sometimes you're going to go ahead and use that substance again. Sometimes you're going to backtrack, but it's about awareness. It's about being able to lower the amount of time before you realize, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to live this.
Yes. Yes.
Do better than this. It doesn't mean that we have to be pure. It means that we need to be intentional. And that is what they don't want us to be. They don't want us to be intentional.
Yeah, I mean, you could not have said it better. You could not have said it better. It is about shortening the time between our unawareness and our awareness about how we're what we're ingesting, what we're doing, how we're thinking. That's all that it is. We're not in pursuit of perfection. We're not, right? But we're in pursuit of an awakening, right? And a collective awakening that I believe is happening, right? People are tuned in right now because they're just like, they're looking around and they're saying, yeah, I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like what I'm ingesting. I don't like what's going on. And I have the power to do something about it. I can't thank you enough, my friend. I cannot thank you enough. You are a place of nourishment. You are a place of grounding. And I'm just so super grateful every week, every week.
I'm not going to cry on this stream today. I told myself before I did it I wasn't going to, but you are testing those, testing that resolve. I thank you so much. I look forward to this every time, and being able to do this is one of the great joys of my life at this present moment. So thank you, Danielle. You were the best. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're back next week.
We're back next week.
We're back next week. All right, everybody, go out, be good, take care of yourselves, make choices, live intentionally. Bye, everyone.